The marble was still warm, not from the lingering sun, but from fresh blood. You stood, a girl of 15, amidst the ruins of what was once the throne room of Byzantine emperors. Shattered mosaics crunched underfoot beneath Ottoman boots. Through smoke-stained windows, Constantinople, a city that had endured for 1100 years, burned, reduced to ash and screaming in a single morning. In the center of this devastation, you stood, Princess Theodora Paleologina, the last daughter of Byzantium. Your hands were blackened with kitchen soot, your hair chopped short, uneven, a desperate attempt at disguise. You wore a servant's rough wool, a coarse fabric that scratched your skin, but it had made no difference. They had found you anyway. Across from you, seated on a portable throne that still carried the raw scent of siege camps and gunpowder, sat the man who had destroyed your world, Sultan Mehmed II, 21 years old, his dark eyes burning with a chilling mix of triumph and calculation. His commanders stood silent behind him, arms crossed, waiting. They knew what came next. Everyone knew what came next. Islamic law was explicit about the fate of noble captives after a city taken by storm. 3 days of pillage, 3 days where everything and everyone belonged to the victors. Your breathing was shallow, a ragged gasp. You tried not to shake, tried to hold yourself still. The Sultan remained silent. Outside, the screaming continued, a ceaseless, mournful wail. But what Mehmed would do in the next 72 hours, the decision he would make regarding this girl, would expose a truth about conquest that neither side wanted history to remember, a choice so utterly unexpected it would be buried for centuries, lost within the propaganda of two empires who both needed simpler stories. Because sometimes the most dangerous truth isn't about the brutality of war, it is about the mercy that follows. What do you do with the princess of a fallen empire, and why would the conqueror who just unleashed hell upon her city make a choice that defied every rule of medieval warfare? Let us cross that threshold again. 57 days earlier, in the spring of 1453, the world's oldest Christian empire was dying. You could almost smell its demise in the air. Constantinople, the queen of cities, 11 centuries old, a bastion against time. It had survived the Huns when Rome fell. It had survived the Arabs. It had even survived the Crusaders who sacked it in 1204. Its colossal walls, built by Emperor Theodosius in 413 AD, had never been breached by force, until now. 80,000 Ottoman warriors surrounded the city, a human tide of steel and fury. 200 warships choked the Golden Horn.
And on the hills, those ominous shapes that made veterans cross themselves, cannons. One of them, a monstrous 27 feet long, designed by a Hungarian engineer named Orban. He had first offered his services to Constantinople, but they couldn't afford him, so he went to the Ottomans. When it fired, the ground trembled 3 meters away. The stone balls, each weighing 1,220 pounds, struck walls that had stood for over 1,000 years. The impact sounded like the world itself cracking open. Inside, 7,000 desperate defenders, Greeks, Venetians, Genoese, men who knew exactly how this would end. Church bells rang without ceasing. Priests carried icons older than most kingdoms, praying for miracles. Citizens barricaded their doors because everyone knew the law. After a city fell by force, the victorious army would be granted 3 days to take whatever they desired. In the great palace lived what little remained of the Palaeologus dynasty. Emperor Constantine XI, 48 years old, knew he was going to die defending his capital. That was certainty. His extended family, cousins, nephews, distant relations, were still there, living in marble halls that now echoed too loudly. Among them was Theodora, 15 years old, educated in Greek classics and Latin, fluent in Arabic, accomplishments that now meant absolutely nothing, as cannons tore their walls apart. What she wanted was impossible, for tomorrow to be like yesterday. What she feared was specific, becoming one of the thousands of captives distributed like livestock after the city fell. She did not know it yet, but in 57 days she would face a 21-year-old conqueror in a blood-soaked throne room. Her survival would depend on something stranger than luck or beauty. It would depend on the complex psychology of a young sultan trying to prove he was more than a warlord. Across those walls, Sultan Mehmed II stared at maps by candlelight. 21 years old, he could not sleep. He had been sultan twice already, first at 12, overthrown within 2 years. His father came back, ruled until he died, and left Mehmed to try again at 19. European courts called him the boy sultan. His own janissaries doubted him. Everywhere he turned, there was his father's ghost, Murad the Great. Mehmed was short, stocky, eyes that witnesses described as burning. He spoke 6 languages, studied Alexander the Great obsessively. He did not just want to conquer Constantinople. He wanted to become Caesar, not symbolically, but literally, the legitimate Roman emperor. Because Constantinople was not just a city, it was legitimacy itself, the capital of an empire that had ruled for 1,000 years. Take it, and you become the heir to Augustus, to Constantine. Fail, and his reign would end. 57 days of feeding 80,000 soldiers, and the treasury was bleeding. His advisors whispered betrayal.
But there was something else in Mehmed's mind, something his generals did not see yet. He was not just planning a conquest, he was planning a transformation. And that changed everything about what would happen to the girl in the palace, the girl who now had 57 days left before her world ended. If this moment in history does not move you to understand how empires truly fall, not with glory, but with terror and impossible choices, you might be missing the lesson written in blood on those marble floors. Stay with us, because what happens next reveals something about human nature that neither conquerors nor conquered wanted us to see. May 28, 1453, one day before the end. In the great palace, Theodora's mother, whose name is lost to history, stood with scissors in hand. Rough cuts. Chunks of black hair fell to the marble floors, scattering like dark petals. Theodora sat perfectly still, watching the strands accumulate. Her mother's hands, usually so steady, now trembled as she stained Theodora's fingers with kitchen soot and dressed her in coarse wool that scratched her skin. "Noble women will be claimed as prizes," her mother whispered, her voice tight with suppressed terror. "Servants might be overlooked." She did not need to say the rest. The unspoken truth hung heavy in the air. Let them think you are worthless. That evening, across the walls, Sultan Mehmed made an offer that shocked his commanders. "Surrender now," he commanded a messenger. "Everyone leaves safely. Constantine can rule the Peloponnese as an Ottoman vassal. No blood, no siege. A final, unexpected olive branch." A messenger rode to the palace under a white flag. Emperor Constantine received him, clad in armor beneath his imperial robes. According to the chronicler Francis, who was present, the emperor's response was calm yet unyielding. "To surrender the city is beyond my authority or anyone else's who lives in it, for all of us have decided to die of our own free will." The messenger rode back. Mehmed's face remained unreadable, but he gave the order immediately. Final assault. Dawn. 2 rulers, 2 impossible positions, 1 throne that only one of them would leave alive. That night, the entire city flowed toward the Hagia Sophia, Orthodox and Catholic, together for the first time in decades, their theological hatreds forgotten in the face of imminent death. Thousands packed the colossal cathedral, candles flickering against gold mosaics. Voices rose in desperate prayer. Theodora knelt among them, her servant's disguise rendering her unrecognizable, just another frightened girl. Around her, old men wept, men who remembered when Constantinople had 300,000 citizens. Young mothers held children who would never grow old.
Outside, the Ottoman drums began their rhythm. Slow at first, a distant heartbeat, then faster, louder. 80,000 voices roar, Allahu Akbar. The chronicler Ducas wrote that the sound was so loud the earth itself seemed to answer back. Inside the Hagia Sophia, prayers faltered, then resumed, louder, more desperate. Theodora's lips moved with the words, but she was not praying anymore. She was memorizing the mosaics, the incense, her mother's hand gripping hers. This was the last moment of the world she knew. They returned to the palace near midnight, the streets empty, Everyone barricaded, waiting. Theodora lay in darkness, listening to her mother breathe. Neither spoke. What was there to say when you were waiting for the world to end? In the Ottoman camp, soldiers sharpened blades, checked armor. Mehmed walked among them, stopping at different fires, speaking in their languages, Turkish, Arabic, Persian. He promised paradise or plunder, whichever they preferred. But he was not thinking about tomorrow's assault anymore. He was thinking about what came after. After the walls fell, after the city burned, after the 3 days of pillage his men expected. What came after conquest? His generals thought the answer was simple: loot, slaves, glory. But Mehmed wanted something they did not yet understand. He wanted to be Caesar, not a mere conqueror, but an emperor, the legitimate heir to Rome itself. And emperors did not just destroy, they transform. The question was whether his men would let him. At 1 o'clock in the morning, the drums began in earnest. In the palace, Theodora jerked awake. Her mother stood at the window, watching the horizon light up with watchfires. It was starting. Theodora rose, still in her servant's disguise, stood still on her hands. They did not embrace, just stood together as the drums grew louder and the first screams carried over the walls. The last dawn of Byzantium was breaking, and neither of them knew that in less than 8 hours, Theodora would face a conqueror who was supposed to claim her like a trophy, but would not. May 29, 1453, 1 o'clock in the morning. 3 waves crashed against the walls like a human tie. First, the irregulars, expendable troops meant to exhaust the defenders. They died by the hundreds, cut down by arrows, boiling oil, rocks, but more kept coming. The second wave, Anatolian regulars, disciplined, armored, methodical. The defenders were tired now, running out of arrows, running out of strength. The third wave, the Janissaries, elite troops, the Sultan's personal guard. Trained in childhood, they did not charge. They flowed forward like a tie of steel, and where they pressed, the walls began to crack.
5 in the morning. Catastrophe. Giovanni Giustiniani, the Genoese commander leading the defense, took an arrow through his breastplate. He panicked, demanded to be taken to his ships. When his Italian mercenaries saw their commander fleeing, their formation broke. Just like that, professional soldiers who had held this wall for 57 days simply stepped back, lowered their weapons, and started looking for ways out. The Ottomans smelled blood. They pressed harder. Then someone noticed the Kerkoporta gate, a small postern usually kept locked. Someone had forgotten to close it after a nighttime sortie. An Ottoman soldier named Ulu Butler Hassan saw it, rushed through with 30 men. They raised the Ottoman banner where Byzantine soldiers could see it. Enemy flags inside the walls. Morale shattered like glass. Men abandoned their posts, running, looking for family, looking for boats, looking for anywhere that was not here. Emperor Constantine XI saw it happening. He tore off his imperial regalia and charged into the thickest fighting, shouting, "The city has fallen, and I am still alive." His body was never definitively identified. The last Roman emperor vanished into the violence like smoke. By 8 o'clock in the morning, Ottoman soldiers poured through 6 breach points. The city that had stood for 1100 years fell in 7 hours. What followed was one of the most brutal days in medieval history. Soldiers ransacked every home. Citizens barricaded inside were smoked out or burned alive. Men were cut down in the streets, women and children rounded up like livestock. Between 30 and 50,000 enslaved that day. The Hagia Sophia became a trap. Thousands had fled there for sanctuary. Ottoman troops broke down the bronze doors, dragged out priests mid-prayer, selecting the most valuable captives, beautiful women, strong young men, children who could be trained. The great palace fell by mid-morning. Ottoman troops burst through marble corridors, tearing down crosses, hunting for the imperial family. Some nobles chose suicide, others hid in cisterns, cellars, secret passages. Theodora, dressed as a kitchen servant, pressed herself into a storage room behind amphorae of olive oil, her heart hammering, listening to boots thunder past,
to screams echoing through corridors where she had once danced. Hours passed. The frenzy became systematic. Eventually, they found her. Her hands too soft, her voice too refined. Kitchen soot could not hide 15 years of court training. Noon, Mehmed rode a white Arabian stallion through the Adrianople gates. He proceeded directly to the Hagia Sophia, not to destroy it, but to claim it. He picked up a handful of dirt and poured it over his turban, an Islamic gesture of humility. He entered the 1,000-year-old cathedral and declared, "This shall become a mosque." An imam recited the call to prayer. The greatest church in Christendom became Hagia Sophia Jami.
But then, Mehmed did something no one expected. He ordered the pillaging stopped immediately after only 1 day instead of 3. Soldiers grumbled but obeyed. He announced that citizens hiding would not be harmed. Former residents could return. Churches would be protected. He was not just conquering a city. He was declaring himself the legitimate Roman emperor. And emperors needed subjects to rule, not corpses to bury. His Grand Vizier began compiling lists of captured nobility. Among them, a teenage girl found hiding in the palace, disguised as a servant. Princess Theodora was brought to the throne room. The marble hall smelled of smoke. Shattered mosaics crunched underfoot. Bloodstains darkened the floor. Mehmed sat on his portable throne, wearing white silk and an enormous turban with a jeweled brooch, deliberately echoing Roman imperial regalia. Theodora was pushed forward, still in her servant's clothing, terrified. Ottoman protocol demanded she prostrate herself. She stood frozen. The silence was deafening, the air thick with expectation. This moment, this unexpected pause in the brutal logic of conquest, was a pivot point in history. It was a truth both sides would try to bury. The conqueror's choice, not for brutality, but for something far more complex and enduring. Mehmed studied her. Then, to the astonishment of his commanders and the few terrified Byzantine attendants still present, he spoke in Greek fluently. "You are of the Paleologos line?" "I am," Theodora managed to say, her voice barely a whisper. "Where is your father?" "Dead in the siege." The throne room held its breath, the silence stretched taut. His commanders expected him to claim her as a concubine, standard practice in a city taken by storm. The Byzantine attendants expected execution or enslavement. Mehmed asked one more question. "Can you read and write Greek, Latin, and some Arabic?" Silence. Theodora, in her rough wool, nodded almost imperceptibly. Then the unthinkable happened. Sultan Mehmed II ordered Princess Theodora released, not as a slave, not as a concubine, but as a free woman under state protection. He assigned her a stipend, a residence in the Fena district, and, most astonishingly, permission to practice Christianity openly. The room erupted in confused whispers, quickly hushed by stern glances from the Janissaries. This moment, this single decision in a blood-soaked throne room, was why this story is buried by both sides. Western chroniclers wanted tales of Ottoman brutality to fuel crusades against the infidel. Ottoman historians wanted tales of military triumph, unblemished by soft-hearted acts. Neither wanted this, a 21-year-old conqueror showing mercy that defied the brutal logic of conquest.
Why did he do it? That question has haunted historians for centuries. Why would a 21-year-old conqueror, fresh from the greatest military victory of the century, show such unprecedented mercy to the daughter of the empire he had just destroyed? The answer lay in the title he claimed for himself, Caesar-i Rum, Caesar of Rome. Mehmed didn't just want to conquer Constantinople, he wanted to become it. To be the legitimate Roman emperor, he needed continuity with the Byzantine past, not its obliteration. By showing mercy to the imperial family, he demonstrated magnanimitas, a Roman virtue. By protecting Christians, he positioned himself as the ruler of all his new subjects, not just Muslims. But it went deeper than mere propaganda. Some historians, including Franz Babinger, suggest Mehmed may have contemplated marrying a Byzantine princess to cement his claim as the true successor to Constantine the Great. Whether Theodora was considered for this role remains uncertain, given her youth, but the unprecedented mercy shown to her strongly suggests a calculation far beyond simple conquest. And Mehmed didn't stop with Theodora. He appointed Gennadius Scholarius, a prominent Byzantine scholar and known opponent of union with the Latin Church, as the new Orthodox Patriarch. He granted Scholarius not only religious authority, but also civil authority over all Orthodox Christians in the empire. A Muslim sultan empowering a Christian religious leader? It was virtually unheard of. The message was clear. This wasn't the end of Byzantine, this was its transformation under new management. Princess Theodora lived under Ottoman protection for 3 years in Constantinople, part of a small Byzantine community that Mehmed deliberately preserved. She witnessed the city's rapid transformation, mosques rising alongside churches, Greek scholars entering Ottoman service, the Sultan establishing libraries and universities. The ruins of her past were being repurposed, rebuilt into something new and grand. In 1456, she was permitted to leave for the Morea, the Peloponnese, where remnants of the Byzantine Empire still flickered under Ottoman suzerainty. Later accounts suggest she married a minor noble, lived until approximately 1480, and died in obscurity, but in freedom. Her story, though quiet, was a testament to the complex realities of conquest. Her tale was suppressed for different reasons by each side. Western European chroniclers preferred narratives of Ottoman brutality. Mercy complicated their calls for crusade. How do you rally Christian armies against an enemy who protects Christian princesses and even empowers Christian patriarchs? Ottoman historians focused on Mehmed's military genius. His protective policies towards Christians suggested an uncomfortable complexity to their narrative of pure Islamic triumph. It was better to tell simple stories of conquest.
But not everyone was so fortunate. Thousands remained enslaved, sold in markets from Cairo to Crimea. The intellectual elite, scholars, theologians, artists, scattered across Italy, taking with them invaluable Byzantine knowledge that would fuel the Italian Renaissance, a cultural rebirth that paradoxically sprang from the death of an empire. The fall of Constantinople triggered a seismic shift across Europe, contributing to the European age of exploration. Trade routes through Ottoman territory became costly and dangerous, spurring Spain and Portugal to seek new paths to Asia. Within 40 years, Columbus would sail west, looking for India, and stumble into the Americas. One city's fall changed the entire world's trajectory. Documents preserved in Ottoman archives tell a story both sides tried to forget. Mehmed's decrees protecting Byzantine nobility, his appointments of Christians to administrative posts, his preservation of Greek scholarship. These reveal a ruler trying to build a cosmopolitan empire, not a monolithic religious state. The irony is profound. The conqueror who destroyed the Byzantine Empire also preserved its people more effectively than the Byzantine emperors themselves, who had been plagued by civil wars, theological disputes, and economic collapse for 2 centuries. Approximately 15,000 Greeks remained in Constantinople under protected status, forming the basis of the Greek Rum community that would administer Ottoman Orthodox populations for 4 centuries. The girl who hid behind olive oil jars became part of something neither side wanted to acknowledge: survival through transformation, continuity through conquest. And the young sultan, whom everyone had called a boy, proved he understood something his generals did not. Empires are not built by destroying everything that came before. They are built by absorbing it, by bending it to a new will, by forging an uncomfortable blend of the old and the new. Here is what haunts me about this story. We want history to be simple: monsters and heroes, victims and victors, clean lines between good and evil. But Theodora's survival, and the survival of thousands like her, reveals something more uncomfortable. A 21-year-old sultan who permitted slaughter could also show strategic mercy that saved thousands. A 15-year-old princess who lost everything could survive through her mother's cunning, her own adaptability, and a conqueror's hunger for legitimacy.
Empires do not end cleanly. Victors need their victims more than they admit. Survival often comes not from compassion, but from the powerful's need to be seen as legitimate, as a worthy successor. This is the truth buried in palace archives, the truth that makes everyone uncomfortable. Because if conquerors can show mercy for strategic reasons, and if conquered peoples can find ways to survive, even thrive under new rulers, then our simple narratives collapse. History becomes messier, more human, more true. How many other princesses, scribes, common people slipped through the cracks of catastrophe because someone powerful needed them alive?
How many stories like Theodora's were buried because they complicated the propaganda of both sides? And what does it say about us, about our own time, that we still prefer simple stories of brutality or triumph to the complicated truth of survival? Picture that throne room one last time. A girl who should have died, standing before a sultan barely older than herself. Both trapped in roles history assigned them, both finding unexpected paths through the rubble of an empire. Mercy and massacre walked hand in hand through the burning streets of Constantinople, and sometimes the most important question isn't who won, it's who survived, and why, and what that survival cost. The historian Critobulus wrote decades later, "The city that had endured for more than 1,000 years fell in a single morning, but the people, some of them, endured much longer." And in that endurance lies a truth more complex than any chronicle of glory or defeat. You have just witnessed one of history's most uncomfortable truths, where conquest and mercy became impossible to separate. Let's apply this difficult wisdom. The past is never simple. It is a tapestry woven with threads of brutal conquest and unexpected kindness, of destruction and strategic preservation. Understanding these complexities isn't just about knowing history, it's about understanding human nature itself. Think about the 21st century. We face global challenges that require nuanced thinking. Simple narratives, black and white distinctions between us and them, often lead to deeper division, just as they did in the propaganda of old empires. What if, instead, we sought the complexities, the uncomfortable truths, the strategic mercies hidden in plain sight? Consider how this story challenges our assumptions. We often believe that power corrupts absolutely, and that conquerors are inherently ruthless. Yet Mehmed II, the very man who brought about the bloodiest day in medieval history, also laid the groundwork for a multi-ethnic, multi-religious empire that would last for centuries. His actions were not driven by sentimentality, but by a cold, hard logic of empire building that ironically saved many.
And Theodora, the princess who disguised herself as a servant, reminds us of the resilience of ordinary people caught in extraordinary circumstances. Her survival wasn't a fairy tale. It was a testament to her mother's quick thinking, her own quiet strength, and the unpredictable whims of power. This isn't just about ancient history, it's about how we navigate our own world. When we encounter conflict, injustice, or moments of profound change, are we content with the easy answers, the simplified narratives that fit neatly into our preconceptions? Or do we have the courage to dig deeper, to find the nuances, the contradictory details, the inconvenient truths that challenge us? The story of Constantinople's fall and Theodora's survival teaches us that history is not a moral lesson of good versus evil. It is a lesson in power, strategy, and human adaptability. It's a reminder that even in the darkest hours, there are forces at play beyond simple brutality, and that survival often hinges on an intricate dance between resistance and accommodation. What does it mean for us to choose complicated truth over simple story? It means recognizing that people, even those we label as villains or heroes, are complex beings driven by a multitude of motives. It means understanding that even acts of mercy can be strategic, and that acts of cruelty can sometimes lead to unexpected outcomes. The legacy of Mehmed and Theodora reverberates even today. The cosmopolitan nature of Istanbul, a city bridging east and west, is a direct result of Mehmed's vision to rebuild it as a new imperial capital, embracing its diverse heritage. The continued presence of Orthodox Christian communities in Turkey speaks to his policy of religious tolerance, however calculated it may have been. And for those who value understanding the true mechanisms of history, not just the heroic legends or tragic laments, this story is a profound awakening. It strips away the comforting myths
and presents a raw, unfiltered glimpse into the forging of a new world order. It shows that sometimes the seeds of transformation are sown in the ashes of destruction, tended by the hand of a conqueror with a vision far grander than his generals could comprehend. So when you encounter moments of profound historical change, remember the warmth of that marble floor. Remember Theodora's soot-stained hands and Mehmed's calculating eyes. Remember that the fall of empires is rarely a clean break, but a messy, often contradictory process where the conqueror and the conquered become inextricably linked. The stories buried in archives, the ones that complicate our tidy narratives, are often the most valuable. They are the ones that truly teach us about human nature, about the enduring struggle for survival, and about the unexpected ways in which power, mercy, and destiny intertwine.
This is not merely a tale of history, but a profound reflection on the enduring human condition. In a world craving simplicity, the past offers us a vital, challenging complexity. Let us not shy away from it, but embrace it, for in understanding the messiness of history, we might just understand ourselves a little better.